monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. These preparations are concealed, not published. Mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised.
Billions of people just living out their lives, oblivious. Choice is an illusion created between those with power and those without.
I drink your milkshake. I drink it up.
Thank you, John Larson. I receive your kind words on behalf of all of our courageous members of the House of Representatives who want the best for the American people. And what we can do that is best for them in the next 24 hours is to pass affordable, accessible health care for all Americans. The best for all Americans is to have 32 million more people to have health insurance in our country. The best for...
Piece of stinking filth.
Shh, you're saying a shop. This is AJ of the InfoWars. Listen to the Shaliak. This is Alex Jones of InfoWars. Listen to Shaliak on the Cold Reality News and Report.
This is the coolest thing I have ever seen.
Well, hello there.
Welcome to Cold Reality Radio here on the UCY.TV Broadcasting Network. This is a special broadcast because it's dealing with what I believe to be a continuity of agenda globally that is affecting us everywhere. Last night, Trump attacked Syria, even though there's incredible evidence showing that Assad did not do this. That's one part. We look at Afghanistan, the never-ending catastrophe going on there. We look at the problems in South America, but today we're going to focus on South Africa, and a gentleman that I met last summer, Simon Roche, from South Africa here in America, trying to create awareness for a coming civil war and genocide. And these things you can't even fathom that these things would happen in our day, in our time. But as I said, through a continuity of agenda of my opinion, these things are being triggered globally to coincide at the same time. And each one of us are going to deal with incredible tragedy on scales that we've never, I don't believe we've ever seen before. And what's happening in South Africa, Simon's going to explain. He's a member of the Sightlanders. It's a emergency plan that has been put together after many years of research and is written according to civil defense law. It is considered as civil defense when a group is organized to administer a refugee flight situation. By becoming part of the Sightlanders emergency plan, you become part of a plan that will function legally according to international civil defense law. And this is coming from them. We have staff countrywide who are personally prepared and receive training for and have received training to be able to manage refugees, logistics, infrastructure, security, etc. This is done by assigning the refugees to these critical functions as they arrive. Our members are preparing to become part of this emergency plan. So, Simon, welcome back to Cold Reality Radio. And again, we met last summer. We spoke probably in October, or November. And you messaged me the other day saying, I need to get this message out. And so I was like, absolutely, let's set this up. So as I said in the beginning, how are you doing? Considering the circumstances, you're doing pretty well. Simon, welcome to Cold Reality Radio.
Andrew, thank you very much for having Suidlanders on again. We appreciate your willingness to give us a second opportunity to continue to tell this story. Things are dire now. They're not good at all, and we need the help. So thank you for it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's my pleasure to do it. I mean, knowing and feeling every day in America, it feels like things are just falling apart. And you've seen from your standpoint in the area of the world that you are from, as I said before when we first spoke, I got introduced to apartheid and these different things that when you thought of Africa, when you thought of South Africa, you thought of apartheid, and then of course Nelson Mandela, and just as an American, we live in a bubble here. We live in a bubble here of disinformation. We live in a bubble. Like, I can't even believe, as I was sitting here this morning, just to explain from the American standpoint of what's going on, and how you were told that you guys are like a phase away from a genocide in South Africa, where nothing is being reported here. The only platform that is putting out information about what's going on is RT. And I haven't heard so much from them. I almost wanted to reach out to them in some way, send an email and saying things are escalating in South Africa, and please do a report on it, or please do something. But at this time now, they're dealing with just incredible. I mean, they've wiped RT off of cable channels. They're removing anything of truth from the playing field. Plus, what we're seeing more of is, and as I'm sitting here and I can't even believe it. Like last night when I heard that Trump was speaking, and that bombs and Syria was being attacked. I'm sitting here this morning and I'm watching it, and I'm looking at these people like they either know that they're lying or they have no idea because of the compartmentalization that goes on. And we don't hear anything about South Africa mostly. I even had a coworker of mine mention that he and his family were going to be going to South Africa and it was weird. Like, I don't know whether he was really going or not, or he had an opportunity to go. And I said, well, I have a connection there in South Africa, and he says that things are not good there. So I don't know. So I said to him, you might not want to go. You might, I just tried to convey to him. So, and at the same time, try to convey to him that there's really awful things going on all over the world. I try to tell these people that I work with, but they live in a bubble. They don't know what's going on. And I think that America is the worst. And then in the UK and in Germany and a lot of these other places that have been affected by refugee displacement, they are seeing things that are happening, but there's large groups out there that are just calling them, awful names because they just have legitimate concerns. So, all right. So what has transpired there that has you, even at a higher level of preparedness, at a higher level of concern?
If I may, Andrew, I'd like to begin by just responding to something you've commented on now, namely the bubble that you live in the USA. There are many examples that I could give you, but I'm going to begin with one. Before I give it, I'd like to say that this is not the voice of arrogance or of wiseacre, somebody who knows everything. I think the word in English is a wiseacre. It's not the case at all. It's just that we've been through what you guys are going through, and we've been through it with consequences. You guys haven't really had meaningful consequences yet. So we can see things about your situation that you can't, and your situation is far worse than you guys realize. The example that I was alluding to is that the homicide rate in the USA is 4.88 per 100,000. And the firearm homicide rate, so of that 4.88 per 100,000, about 4.77 people are killed by firearms in the USA. When you guys commit a murder, you do it with a firearm. It's just as simple as that. The rest of us use a variety of things, but you guys are pretty stuck on firearms. Okay. So at 4.77 per 100,000, you've got children marching in the streets, sanctimoniously preaching what government policy should be, and implicitly trying to overturn your constitution. I mean, you're basically being led by the nose by 11-year-olds. And there's this hysteria right across the USA, and it has spilled over into international media. The whole world is reporting on the hysterics on the streets of the USA over the people who get killed by firearms, which is 4.77 out of 100,000 people.
Right.
The homicide rate in South Africa is 52 per 100,000, so more than 10 times higher. The homicide rate of farmers in South Africa is, the figure is disputed because the police refuse to give the data for it to be calculated. They refuse to release it, our police service. It is a minimum of 97, perhaps as high as 133. 2,000% higher than the USA homicide rate. 2,000% higher. And yet nobody's talking about it. No. If that was happening in the USA, a homicide rate of a particular group of people at a rate of 100 per 100,000, or for that matter, a general national rate of 52 per 100,000, well, I don't want to know. It won't just be 11-year-olds on the street. It'll be 5-year-olds, all telling their parents how wrong and how bad they are, and how the Constitution should be changed, and how they know better. And the entire liberal establishment would be standing behind them, applauding.
Yes.
And yet, very few people are talking about what's happening in South Africa.
Yes.
You guys do live in a bubble. You are being led by the nose to the slaughter, in the same way that we were in the 1980s and the 1990s. You guys are in the situation of a camper who's lying blissfully unaware of any impending danger in his sleeping bag, who is presently joined by a python or a boa constrictor, and that python slithers into the sleeping bag silkily across the skin of the oblivious camper, and it entwines itself around him so softly that the camper in his REM state enjoys the sensation.
Yeah.
The python only clenches tight when it's too late. That is the nature of the way that white, European-derived Christian civilization in the key places of Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the USA, and South Africa, how it is being destroyed by this liberal onslaught. Everything that you said in your introduction is 100% spot on, and I just wanted to supplement what you had to say with that illustration.
Thank you.
In South Africa, we're a bit like, I don't remember, but in The Lord of the Rings, I vaguely recall, I read the book 28 years ago, I vaguely recall that there was kind of an outpost. I don't know whether it was the men who rode the horses, or whether it was the elves, or the this or the that, but they were basically an outpost, and the general idea was that if they fell, the rest of Middle Earth would fall. And South Africa is that. That's exactly what we are in this picture.
Right.
Right at the moment, there is a massive communist-inspired onslaught on every kind of Western European-derived conservative value that you can imagine. It's now reached the point where they have passed a motion in our parliament authorizing the beginning of the process to expropriate land, which you may as well read as white-owned land, right, without compensation. Expropriation without compensation. And this is in spite of the fact that the African National Congress swore on everything holy at the time that it was trying to make a good impression on the world, that if there was one thing that they would keep sacrosanct, it would be property rights. And of course, they were loudly echoed by the Clinton administration. Everybody in the Clinton administration, vouched for the African National Congress. And Tony Blair and others. It wasn't the Clinton administration alone. But in spite of those promises, they're now breaking all of the promises. There is this massive level of murder of farmers. The government is doing nothing about it, and they are bringing in laws to take all of our land away. It's created quite a level of hysteria here now in South Africa, and conservative Christians are frantically preparing. We've had an increase in membership like you can't believe.
Okay, that's good. That's a good thing. You need more people to resist and to make this plan, this emergency plan, effective, more effective, for sure.
We do.
Yeah.
We do. We need as many people as we can get, Andrew.
Yeah.
But we've worked it out in a sort of modular way. Another kind of parallel example that I could give you is that of the Great American Redoubt in the northwest of the USA. That whole concept that has been so eloquently articulated by James Wesley Rawls in his books, the Patriot series, where you get the few people who are interested and who believe and who can foresee to create a core so that when others join, you can expand it readily. You don't aspire to building massive foundations and massive walls for a castle that you can never complete. Instead, you build one small little hunting lodge so that you can keep the core of your people warm. And when they're joined by 3 or 4 more, then you add a room and a room and a room and a room again.
Okay. So Rawls, did you a lot of his methodology for his and Rawls is kind of like a prepper. He writes stories about Civil War type situations and how people. I believe I bought one of his books and I got kind of halfway through it and some things got a little crazy and I wasn't able to finish. But I'd heard him on the Infowar platform and so I am familiar with him, and he has a lot of prepper and a lot of really good ideas that that can benefit those in really horrible situations.
Yes, we weren't inspired by him at all, and I think I'm correct in saying that we devised our national emergency plan before he wrote his first book. In any case, up until, I don't know, about a year or 2 ago, our leader, Gustav Müller, and our senior manager, the guy who runs our organization on a day-to-day basis, had never heard of James Wesley Rawls. But it's very ironic because the two plans are very similar in many ways. Not identical, but the concept is similar.
Sure. So they're just deciding that it's time to take land without compensation, and they will support that. Are they devising some kind of plan of their own, or is it just going to be like, hey, if we show up at your home one day, that's it, you got to move out, like kind of like a carjacking or a housejacking, something like that?
Well, that's a very good question, Andrew. You're the first person to ask me that question. It's actually a very, very good question, and I don't have a straight answer for you. The Parliament has convened a committee that has been given 6 months to work on certain practicalities. And we don't know what form the law is going to take in the end. But when it was voted on, when the motion to initiate this process was voted on, it received 75% support, almost precisely 75% support. So it's definitely going to go ahead. That's more or less beyond dispute. And the question now is, what law are they going to come back with now that they've been given the mandate to come up with a law to ensure this expropriation without compensation? So who knows what form it's going to take? That's a good question. But what is certain is that the government is determined to take whites off the land, to undermine whites in this process, which is kind of a complementary process to our affirmative action laws. We have affirmative action laws in South Africa which are called broad-based black economic empowerment. And those laws stipulate, for example, that any company that wishes to deal with a company, that wishes to do business with the government, in other words, it goes down 3 tiers.
Right.
All of the suppliers to the suppliers to the suppliers of the government, which means through the multiplier effect, it means the overwhelming majority of our economy. Any of those companies is obliged to have a minimum of 20%, 25% plus 1 share, not 26%, 25% plus 1 share black ownership. But in certain industries or sectors such as mining and banking, that ownership has to be around about 50%, 49%, 50, 51. There are various laws. Right. So they are very effectively disincentivizing any company from employing whites, because every time you meet those criteria and exceed them, you get a preference. So if you come along and say, well, the law says 25% plus 1 share, I have employed 30% black people, I have 30% black ownership, and I have 60% black workforce, and this, that, the next thing. What do I get? What is my prize? The government says, well, your prize is that we put you to the front of the queue. So if you are selling a pineapple for $1, and it's a kind of mediocre pineapple, it's a bit of a stale, crappy pineapple, but your competitor is selling a pineapple that is really, really fresh for 50 US cents, you still get the contract. Even if your services or your goods are inferior and they cost more money, you still get the contract. So, anybody who understands this kind of thing, business, will appreciate immediately the massive impact that this is having on white employment in South Africa and on our economy. Our economy is in big, big trouble. So the taking of the land is merely the next installment in a process. You guys in the USA have an expression called I don't know where it comes from, but the long march through the institutions. It comes from some or other author who spoke about the communist takeover of the universities and so on in the USA. Now, similarly, we have the long march through the laws and the economy. The communists are gradually, little bit by little bit, transforming our society into something that's in their image, you know. That began slowly at first with many promises that they would never do it, but over time they have taken little steps forward that have completely changed the nature of our economy, the employment profile, and so on. It's very interesting to witness their cunning, and you have to almost give them credit for it, because they have done such a better job of being communists and of being anti-European. I'm talking about European-derived culture, European-derived societies, whether it's in the USA or Canada or New Zealand or France, it's the same concept. Whether it's anti-European, whether it's anti-Christian, whether it's pro-communist, whether it's anti-capitalist, they've done a far better job of destroying us than we have done of looking after our identity, our values, culture, norms, and mores all over. Whether it's Australia or the USA or Canada, we are perversions. We are perverse reflections of our forefathers now.
Right. So, again, not very many people know very, very much about Africa. And so the things that we've heard over the years on the, I would believe, you know, when the Ebola outbreak took place over there, and everybody was concerned because there were people flying back and forth from there to Dallas, and one guy, you know, I don't know whether to believe any of these stories or not that come through the media anymore, because, as I said, I sat here and I watched them talk about all of these chemical attacks, and I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, why would he have done these things? He's winning with the help of Russia. He's winning over there. So, I mean, I can't even believe anything that I see anymore. But yes. So we have that, and then right before it ended, the U.S. sent some kind of militarized troop, a number of troops over there. And then after that happened, after that particular thing happened, then it disappeared. You didn't hear anything about Ebola. You didn't hear anything. And I truly believe at that point that thing, or that fake event, I know people were probably dying over there for sure, which is, I guess, logistically is probably to the west. If you're talking about South Africa, it was on like the western side of the, you know, southern Africa. And so I'm thinking, yes, what happened there after that? It all kind of fizzled out. But all I could think was the objective was reached. They got some kind of movement. They got some kind of transfer of interest into that side of Africa. Plus, you hear about what's going on up in and Africa is just a huge continent. I mean, Libya from you to fly there would be like how many hours to give somebody an idea of how huge the African continent is. I mean,
well, there's no time zone difference, so it's about an 8-hour flight to Libya.
Wow.
And there is no time zone difference, so it's
right.
8 real hours.
8 real hours, right. So that gives you an idea. I mean, you can fly from the East Coast to Los Angeles in like 5 hours or 6 hours. I mean, yes. Africa is uniquely large, and we've seen what they did. We've seen what France has done with their collusion and things in there, and Northern Africa is pretty much a mess now too, because of this hidden hand, because of these influence, these influential, and I don't even, if somebody comes into a country and says, we're going to do this economically from you, I don't believe that either. So who are these? And I know at this point it is, you guys are in, a high alert. These things could happen. That's why I posed the question, what is this going to look like? Are they just going to show up at your door and say, hey, this is ours now? So, and you're at that point where you're thinking they could show up anytime and just say, hey, get out or do worse. So who are these organizations who are these organizations? Is there a connection? We have banks here. We have a bank here in America called Santander, who was the main bank in Puerto Rico that just totally decimated them economically. The island of Puerto Rico, right? Which is basically a colony of America. Because they said a lot of people think there's 50 states when there's actually probably about 57 actual states. Right. So a lot of Americans don't even know that. They still believe that there's 50 states. But that's good for them to know, because if they knew what the other ones were, they would realize that they're a colony. And so Santander is here now in America doing commercials here. So how much do you think, like what has been driving I know that there's drugs. I know that I watched one particular documentary, Vice. I don't know if you saw that. It's a show called Vice, where they went into areas of South Africa and people are smoking all kinds of substances. The drugs are in there too, so that's fueling a fire. That's totally fueling some kind of economic fire. It's systematic. That's why I said in the beginning of the program, and I said this is a continuity of agenda that is destroying, that I truly believe, and I don't think that I'm overstating it, is destroying humanity. Yes. Collectively at the same time. We're looking at a storm. We're looking at the perfect storm for evil. It's not going to be perfect for commoners and other folk, but it's going to be the perfect storm, because everything's going to happen around at one time. And I truly believe that World War III has already started. It's gone into another gear for sure.
You're absolutely correct, Andrew. We adhere quite closely to a series of prophecies given by a man about 100 years ago, and this is not an evangelical exercise. I'm not attempting to persuade you or any of your listeners to share our point of view at all. But I do think that it's
relevant for sure,
instructive. I think that we can all learn something from this. Saatlanders is the world's largest civil defense organization of its kind. There's no similar organization in the world that is as large as we are. We have just over 100,000 members, which is pretty considerable. And in that sense, we're just a legal entity, constituted under international law. But we are kind of, in an extra legal sense, we are very much Calvinist, Protestant, old-fashioned, and we don't wear hats like the Amish people do. We drive cars, we watch television, we have completely modern lifestyles. But in terms of ethics, we hold to a pretty old-fashioned type of Christianity, the Christianity that was ubiquitous through the Western world for almost 2,000 years, until humanism became dominant only about 150 years ago. So with that in mind, with that little piece of background in mind for you, I tell you that we believe in this series of prophecies. And this dude said, about 100 years ago, he lived from 1862 to 1926. 1862, 1926, that's right. He died when he was 64 years of age. And he spoke about die doringbos, which means the thorn tree. And he said that the doringbos are those people who serve the interests of a global new world order, international capitalism, academia, the media, the mainstream media, the politicians, the capitalists, the bankers, those kind of people. So if you ask me, who do I think is doing it? We always say to people that our first enemy is not the black people of South Africa. And this is on our website, our main website, our Afrikaans language website, contains hundreds of articles exploring this very concept. We don't believe that our primary enemy is the black people of South Africa. We believe that our primary enemy is your primary enemy, the primary enemy of the decent, good people of Australia and New Zealand and Western Europe, the people who are letting the Muslims into Europe, the people who are stimulating the opioid crisis in the USA, the people who are instigating the attacks on Syria that make no sense at all, the people who gulled or beguiled, who conned the world into tolerating the attack in the onslaught on Libya and what happened in Iraq and Afghanistan. That is the doringbos, the great thorn tree.
Right.
These are the guys who are clearly executing a concerted plan to destroy Western humanity. Their core efforts are not directed at Bhutan, Indonesia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Vietnam, or even Japan for that matter. It's impossible to emigrate to Japan, even as an American. To become a citizen of Japan is just about impossible. The Japanese are not interested in immigrants. They don't care what the rest of the world thinks. And what Donald Trump, not Donald Trump, that's a poor example, what Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton or Bill Clinton have to say on the matter, they're not interested. This plan is being executed against European-derived, white, Caucasian, Christian civilization. You only have to look at it to see, yes, there are terrible things happening in Central America and South America, but you cannot compare the concerted effort, the unified effort, the deluge, the onslaught in the media and in your schools and so on and so forth to what is happening in, let's say, Central America. The effort is far greater in the USA and in Western Europe. They are trying to destroy us, Andrew. By now, it must be clear. If people can't see it by now, then with all due respect, the problem lies with those people, not with the evidence. There was a time where you or I might have said, well, I'm not sure, and the newspaper said, and my mommy said, and my teacher always told us, and it's not my fault that I don't understand, and it's all a bit confusing for me. Yes, there was that time, but that time has long passed. The evidence is now so crystal clear that the onus is upon us. It is no longer upon the evidence. We have gotten all of the evidence that we are ever going to get of the onslaught upon our little children. And this onslaught is being conducted by some kind of a global conspiracy. Whether you believe that David Icke is the one who's put his finger on the button,
right,
or whether you believe that some other conspiracy theorist has got it right, or whether you believe in our prophet, Sina van Rensburg, the man I was talking about, the guy who predicted the presidency of Donald Trump and who predicted that the Third World War would start in or around Syria. You don't have to believe him. I'm not going to try and convince you to believe him, but you've got to start believing something.
Yeah. I mean, the concerted effort to just educate people into one collective mindset is so obvious.
Yes.
Just reading certain, and it even goes like, I mean, I look at, I started listening to Alex Jones, and one of the key very powerful points of your interview, with him. And I got goosebumps. I was driving in my car and I was listening to it, and I'm like, hey, there's Simon, and he's on Jones. And I don't really listen to him much anymore because he really kind of beats around the bush. He does he provides a certain type of service, but there's also like a certain amount of disservice to him, because what I truly believe, and through the people that I've come in contact with on my personal journey in my life, is that America is run by bloodline families of Europe, and George Washington was part of it, and a lot of the other founding fathers, the so-called founding fathers, were part of it as well. And if you look at a lot of these people, and they're doing a lot of genealogical studies, if you look at these people that are in Hollywood, you look at people like Brad Pitt, you look at people like Angelina Jolie, you look at all these people, and they're all related to, like, Jolie is related to Hillary Clinton. There was even like an 18th cousin connection between Hillary and Donald Trump. Okay, Obama, in the beginning of his, when he was president-elect, they found out that he was related to Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney related to George W. Bush. This is a conspiracy of bloodlines. This is truly a conspiracy of bloodlines. And I truly believe that Alex Jones, from what he says in his all the different things, and I listened to him for a long time. Trust me, I listened to him for a long time, and I learned a decent amount. But I also learned what his motives were, in my mind, and through other people that kind of put me on the right track, and I believe nothing is a coincidence. Everybody that has connected with me, as well as yourself, has brought me to the real realization, and not the conspiracies within the conspiracies within the conspiracies. So Alex Jones is a bloodline relative of a lot of these people that are.
Is he?
He's got to be. There's just no doubt in my mind. You look at Jeff Sessions, he's related to Barack Obama. You look at just so many of these people that, John McCain is related to George Washington. There's a show on PBS called Finding Your Roots. And I'm sitting here one night, we're watching it, and at that time I was in the whole genealogical awareness thing, like, this means something. But the thing that the trap that people get into, Simon, is they're like, aren't we all related? So they all say that, like, aren't we all related in some way? So that just diffuses the conversation. It diffuses the conversation, just like calling somebody a racist or calling somebody anti-Semitic or something like that. It just kills any kind of conversation, because somebody has been labeled a ne'er-do-well, and then so the conversation's over. So we sit here and I'm watching it, and it's a show. It's like 20 minutes of one person. It's an hour with like 3 different people, and there's so McCain's the last one, and it gets down to like the very last page of this book that they put together for him, their guest on the show. And he said, before you turn that page, this is very significant. And right at that point, I looked over to my friend Margie and I said, that's George Washington on the other side. That's George Washington on the other side of that page. I said, I bet my life on it. He flips it over, and he's like, oh, yeah, you're related to George Washington. And I was like, there's no doubt in my mind that America and what America became was a triggered, family members from the other side, from over in Europe, coming over here and kind of making this elaborate story of freedom and everything. And I go back to that, and I don't believe it anymore. And Jones still says, 1776. I do not believe what we've been told in the past. These are just really, really nice stories that they wrap the Bible in a flag and beat you over the head with it. So once I started looking at the bigger picture, I'm saying these people are all bloodline family members. That's why they're congressmen and senators and actors and actresses, and they're all making big money. And that's why Hollywood is incredibly liberal, because they don't want to bite the hand that has given them what they have. So, and then you get guys like Tim. I think The Last Man Standing was this show with Tim the Tool Guy. I don't know if you've ever seen that over there, where he was. Anyway, so he's a conservative guy. He kind of started putting out some conservative views in this show, and they canceled the show. So it's if you don't commiserate and do the liberal, the whole thing, the anti-gun, all this stuff, you're done. You're done in Hollywood, and they've said it. A lot of them said it. So that's that kind of being a side thing. But I'm seeing so many people that are related, and they're all in positions of power. Not saying that they want to do bad things, but the people that have created and funded the American corporation. And I have a friend of mine that has written any number of books. He had a show called The Corporation Nation, where he goes and proves that a lot of these so-called countries are really just run like corporations. But so overall, I mean, somewhere along the line, this effort to destroy anything that is good, whether Christianity. The teachings of Christianity, like do good things for people, just all these. There's just a darker, this dark hidden hand that the people will say that is in there, and they're doing awful things. And I think it's all coming to a head. That's why I say continuity of agenda, because of what's happening in Africa, not only in South Africa, but Libya, the Eastern Africa, and then there's American troops over there somewhere, and most people had no idea that they were there. And then they were like, well, what are they doing over there? I'm like, nobody's ever going to get the truth unless you listen to alternative media and then try to derive from yourself what the. And a lot of people are pretty spot on, so they kind of know certain things, but it's so far away and displaced from the American bubble of disinformation and filtered. I mean, you could get like 15 or 20 cities that have a NBC or a CBS affiliate or a Fox affiliate, and they say the same thing. They read the same stories. They made YouTube videos where you hear a talking head say this one particular phrase around Easter time, and then like 20 other people, 20 other or 30 other talking heads reading the same story. So that's how America is really controlled, because if we really knew what was going on, if we really knew how systematically, and you can, and this can be done. Like, people won't even believe that this can be done on such a large scale. But all it takes is money, power, and the will to control the minds of people, and that's what government is. If you break it down in Latin, govern, control, mente, mind. We have mind controllers, and that's what they do to us. At least here in America, and things are so much. Obviously, so much different there in Africa and South Africa. So that was my little.
Like the canary in the coal mine. What we're going through is sort of an experiment for later implementation in the USA and elsewhere in the world. Because we're a minority population, we're very much more vulnerable to being dominated. So they test things on us, and if they work, well, then they implement them elsewhere. It's a bit like the Ebola. I don't think that Ebola was intended to be an end in itself. The Ebola crisis, I think, may have been some kind of an experiment.
Right.
Let's see how this works. Look, there's one thing that's certain. It's very queer. It's very difficult to understand how things like Ebola and HIV, for that matter, come out of nowhere for thousands of years, for centuries. They're unknown. The next day, there are 100 people infected with this disease.
Yep.
How does it happen so quickly? There's nothing else like it. And there's no history, there's no record in human history of flu becoming, emerging overnight,
right?
For example, or cancer or whatever else. These things have always existed and gotten worse, whereas things like HIV and Ebola have come out of the blue.
Mm-hmm.
So it suggests, and I'm not sure, I don't want to sound like a crazy dude here,
right,
but it suggests that maybe they were contained and then released.
Yeah, I
mean, if they were there all the time, people would be getting sick all the time.
That's true. Yeah.
So if people weren't getting sick all the time, either they weren't there and they appeared magically, or they were there but they were contained and then released. That to me seems logical. I don't fancy myself as much of a conspiracy theorist. I met many people in the USA who had some pretty wild and woolly ideas by our standards. You know, we're quite a conservative population, and I'm not knocking anybody. I'm just saying that there's a lot of kind of peculiar ideas in the USA that you know we don't really kind of take very seriously in South Africa.
Right.
But I don't think that it's wild and woolly or peculiar or queer to query the fact that diseases like Ebola didn't exist yesterday, but today they're killing everybody, and there's global hysteria. There's something queer about that. So, I think that we, South Africa, are similarly a kind of a guinea pig for the world, you know?
Right.
Similar to perhaps the experiments with Ebola in West Africa, if these kind of suspicions that I'm hinting darkly at are true.
Yeah.
We are similar.
Yeah.
We are the guinea pig of the white Western European Christian-derived societies of the world. It's much of what has happened in the USA over the past 20 years is what happened to us 40 years ago. Massive media onslaught about a particular set of values sustained over a couple of generations or a generation. And the next thing you know, the entire nature of the society has changed. That's what happened amongst whites in South Africa. We went from being ultra conservative, almost to the very last person, to being liberal. You know, the majority of whites now support the new South African rainbow nation, even though it's thoroughly perverse, even though it's whites who are being killed at this disproportionate rate.
Yeah.
And you guys, too, have gone from... I remember reading when I was at university in a newspaper one day. I just happen to remember this quite well. It's not that I have an impeccable memory on everything that I come across. But in about 1989, I was reading a newspaper at university one day, and I will never forget this. A study had been done which revealed that just over 30 out of 100 people in the USA attended church, and the 2 out of 100 in the United Kingdom of Great Britain attended church. Now, I'm not praising attending church. I'm not saying if you attend church it's good. We, the majority of us, are not churchgoers. We're ardent Christians, but that we believe that the church is the first disgrace.
Oh, no doubt.
On
absolutely
Western European society. But
the
fact remained that was indicative of the deep conservatism of American society. You know, 1 in 3 people attends church regularly, compared to the UK. 30 out of 100, just over, and compared to the UK, 2 out of 100. And yet, the USA that I saw when I toured there 6 months ago, just, you know, not even 30 years down the line, which is just a generation. In sociological terms, a generation is 25 years. Is a completely different society. I mean, I remember being in certain places where every second person that I saw had that very characteristic damage to their teeth from smoking meth, crystal meth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's very characteristic. It's very easy to recognize.
Sure.
You know, these damaged, broken people.
Mm-hmm.
I remember seeing the destruction in Chicago and Detroit and in what is this city? Baltimore.
Baltimore, right.
You know, the USA is not a shadow of its former self. I believe, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
And they are doing the same thing to you as they began to do with us. They corrupt all of the values, and then they come along and say, well, if you accept these substitute values, then you won't feel so empty anymore.
And it's subtle. It's very subtle, like you said, like the snake. They do it very, very slowly and methodically so that, you know, it might be, you're not realizing it at the time, but like now, like you're saying it, as you're describing it, it's crystal clear. The effect, the diseased culture. All you have to do is look at some of the television shows. These absolutely diseased culture. I remember back in 1980 when music television was on the scene and everybody's like, wow, look at this, you know, music videos.
Yes.
And then so we're sitting there, we're watching all these music and we're putting visual to the music, you know, some say the soundtrack of our lives. And now if you look at MTV today, it's an absolute abomination of just degeneracy and broken people. You will see broken people and how that is, and it's almost as if, and I guess it's not even almost as if, it's people profiting from the damage that a disease culture has done to people. So then they'll have like a celebrity, they'll have a show like Celebrity Rehab with this guy, Drew, Dr. Drew Pinsky. And then you'll just see these people behaving awfully and, you know, they're on drugs and they're like, what's the, and an American comedian named Doug Stanhope pointed it out. It's like, what is the cure for these people? What is the cure for these people? And they can't, even these so-called professionals cannot even say or describe what is going to make these people not be addicts anymore. And I believe that there's no external, any source out there that's going to make somebody say, I'm going to stop smoking heroin. I'm going to stop shooting heroin. It's people, if people get to that point in their life where they do that and then they want to continue to do it, even though they know that it's damaging and going to destroy their lives and the lives of their family, which I believe this system really loves to destroy the family unit. Because once you break up the family unit, once you attack, once you turn the nurturer, the woman, or, you know, Eve, you can say.
Yes.
Once you destroy Eve and get her to, you destroy everything. Because once she feels that you get, and you know, I'm not judging, but I'm just, I'm viewing this, I'm seeing this. When I see women out there saying, you're trying to tell me, the divide and conquer, this is with the right and the left. The right's trying to tell me what to do with my body. The right's trying to tell me what to do with my body. No, the left is using you as a tool, and the right is basically, you know, saying, you know, this is not a good thing to do. This is not a good thing to do. But, you know, once those kids are born, right, and they're not aborted, then the right can send them off to war to fight for the American corporation. So it's correct. It's a mess. And once you destroy the woman and you make you turn the woman from being a nurturing, a life-giving species forwarding a part of our biological design, you've really just destroyed everything. Everything else falls apart. Everything falls apart.
You know, Andrew, I'd like to digress slightly and touch on another point that is very relevant to this.
Absolutely. Whatever direction you want to go.
I beg your pardon?
Whatever direction you want to go in, man. You got the floor.
Yeah, well, I think it's a continuation of this train of thought that you introduced. We are seeing a massive onslaught against us in South Africa now, and it brings to mind the axiom of Mahatma Gandhi. Not that I'm a Gandhi fan, but he said, first they ignore you, then they mock you, then they fight you, then you win. And leaving aside the fourth part, let's just focus on the first three parts. Although Suidlanders is the world's largest civil defense organization of its type by a country mile, you could find very little information about Suidlanders in the mainstream media in South Africa. There was more chance of you finding the results of a lawn bowls tournament played on a Sunday afternoon between 12 people of the average age of 74 than there was of you getting any information about Suidlanders. Mm-hmm. You know, it just didn't make any sense at all. They went out of their way to ignore us, to pretend that we didn't exist. And then they went into a phase which is continuing now of mocking us, of making scurrilous attacks, slander, and what have you. I've been very interested to discover how rapidly that has happened in the USA. You know, Identity Europa is an excellent case in point. Identity Europa is, aside from maybe Generation Identitaire in Europe, which is terrifically successful, probably the leading success story of the, let us call it Caucasian or European-derived right wing in the world of the past possibly 100 years. You know, Nathan D'Amigo founded Identity Europa in mid to late 2016. By mid-2017, it was massive. I don't know what the exact numbers were, but it was a vital, dynamic, active organization with many thousands, possibly tens of thousands, maybe as many as 100,000 active members. And then along came Unite the Right in Charlottesville on the 13th of August, 2017. And they used that almost as a watershed moment to bring the right wing together, to create a massive crisis and thoroughly discredit the entire right wing, and then to make their agents very active. They almost had sleeper agents in organizations throughout the right wing of the USA who suddenly became active. And all of a sudden, you saw that the discourse on the internet throughout the right wing of the USA was far more divisive than it was unifying. There had always been a lot of debate and argument and some bickering and squabbling. That's true. But overnight, 90% of the narrative was divisive as opposed to 25% or 15%. And the right wing of the USA has been shattered almost overnight. And I think that you guys would do well to try to find commonalities rather than differences and try to unite under one common banner. I'm not saying one dominant organization. I'm not saying one hegemonic philosophy. I am saying that let's give an example here. Let's say that you and I colonized an island that popped out of the ocean. And there were about 20 of us, and we colonized that island, and we set up a new country, and there was a lot of fighting between us, you know, and we decided this is no good. Some of the guys have been killed in a feud. One guy stole another guy's wife, and there's been a lot of robbery and all sorts of things. This is no good. At this rate, we're going to destroy ourselves.
Right.
We can't agree on everything. There are a few Presbyterians amongst us. There are a few Methodists, whatever it may be. Some capitalists, some socialists, whatever the case may be. But by and large, we feel that we need to make a go of this island. Otherwise, we're going to die because we're more or less stranded here now. Nobody else is going to come and rescue us. And we decide that what we'll do is we will look at everything that's common to us, and we'll leave aside the differences, and we'll focus on those common things. Let's say, for argument's sake, we say, all right, we've all got to help one another to build a house. So all 20 of us are going to build one house, then another, then another, then another, then another, until everybody has a house. All 20 of us are going to plow a field, and then another field, and then another field, and then another field, until everybody has a field, and we become kind of sustainable. I think that mentality, without trying to pontificate, without trying to preach that all Americans should join Identity Europa or the League of the South or whatever, organization you want, the American Freedom Party. I'm not saying that. I am saying that if you are sincerely devoted to this cause, if you are genuinely convicted of the things that Andrew Shali says in his podcast, if you really believe that there is a great problem and your children are going to be destroyed, then try to reach out to people, to cooperate with them to the extent that you are able to cooperate with them, without trying to evangelize them and say that they must become Dutch Reformed or Mormon or whatever the case may be. To say, look, to this extent, we agree with one another. We're absolutely positive that Andrew Shali or William Johnson or Jared Taylor or Nathan D'Amigo or Dr. Michael Hill or whoever the case may be, generally speaking, this broad right-wing philosophy is far more correct than anything else that society is offering us. Because let's face it, even the Republicans are so liberal by the standards of our forefathers that our forefathers would be disgusted to acknowledge that, such and such a senator is a scion of his loins.
Indeed.
We are universally in the same problem, Andrew. And if there's one piece of advice that I can give you, not because we in South Africa know everything, but because we're 20 to 25 years ahead of you on precisely the same trajectory. And therefore, we've watched this movie before. We know how this movie ends. And in the spirit of love, we are reaching out to the Americans who've been kind and generous to us, who've helped us, who hosted us for 6 months in the USA last year, to say, hey guys, if we can give you one piece of advice, we see that you are being shattered to smithereens by infiltrators who are dividing you to conquer you. Do yourselves a favor. Look at the commonalities. Find what is common rather than accentuating or focusing upon the differences, and cooperate with one another.
And I think in general, Simon, I think that people will intermingle with one another. I see a lot of young black people having white friends, and I honestly, when I see that, when I see a group of people hanging out together and enjoying a laugh or enjoying something, it makes me feel good. It really does make me feel like it gives me, in my heart, it makes me feel good to see that people of different backgrounds are, communicating together and having a good time and respecting each other. My nephew has a number of black friends, and they get along like tremendously. I look at them and I'm like, wow, I wish that I had, friends, like not necessarily just like black friends, but friends that, were just like goofy and silly and just enjoyed each other's company. And I think that's happening more so than, of course, the media is putting out. The media is throwing out now these. I don't know if you read that this one particular university has just a black only Saturday. No white people are allowed to come to the university or something like that. I'm seeing that now.
Yes, I saw something about that.
So what I think is happening is that this is not in America. And as you said, we you know, your situation there is much. Has changed much because of where you're at, and outside of the American, you know, empire and all those other different elements. But I think overall people get along with one another. They might even have differences, but in general, the people that I've communicated with, you know, there was a guy that I worked with that he and I had. A black man, really had great conversations about the world. Like, I try to have conversations with people all the time. I try to stir up thought-provoking conversation about the world and the way it is. Like right now, I've been having conversations with this guy from this Ukrainian guy or you know, Russian guy. That works for us, or that I work with, and we talk about Putin, we talk about Russia, we talk about, and I told him, I said, we're you know, we are any day now. I said, any day now we're going to be in a hot war. Right now it's just like, you know, the water's starting to move a little bit in the pot. At any moment, we're going to be I told him, I said, we're going to be in a hot war. And we have this chat room that we communicate, with, and I created a room in there called Plato's Cave. And right. I put all these, you know, I put information about everything, like the people that I interviewed, like I threw information in there about South Africa and Russia and what the things that are happening. And I say, war's going hot, man. And I said, the world is never going to be the same again. If you look at, you know, I've studied a little bit about the Russian Revolution and how that was instigated from the outside. That was instigated. The overthrow of Russia was instigated by, there's no doubt in my mind, Vatican bankers, American bankers, European banking institutions, and of course, how many Christians were killed there, and what was happening at the same time? World War I. World War I was happening at the same time that the Russian Revolution kind of kicked in, and obviously a world war is going to overshadow something that's going on inside of you know, of a country, especially with the lack of media back then. Kind of like you know, what's happening today in South Africa, where we're not hearing what's going on. We're not seeing the farmers that are being killed, and everything that's happening methodically into an obviously awful direction. And I just think that like what they did last night, we crossed the Rubicon, man. It's on. I mean, something is going to happen. There hasn't been any reports of Russia shooting back or doing anything that they said that they were going to do if Syria was attacked. But we are, I mean, there's just no coming back from where we are, and everything is money. When your country is run like a corporation, war is profitable, and that's the direction that you know, that we're always going to go in. We're always going to be on that foot that's going to say we need to bomb this country or that country because they did something awful, even though the evidence is overwhelming that these were provocateur chemical attacks. Would make no sense for someone to you know, a leader of a country who is overall winning and flushing out the jihadis that are being funded by that are being supported and funded by Israel and America and the UK and France. I mean, they're all. It's so frightening to sit here and watch people on the news talk about a country and then all the lies that are coming out of it, where I don't know that there's any coming back. There's just no coming back. I think they want us to, with the disease culture, the television programming that people just get locked into. There is no positive, or if there is programming that is positive and life, that can add to life and add to. Make families stronger, or make people, like you said, see the things that are common about us and not the differences. But again, the media just points out all of these things and how we're different from each other. It's hard to see those commonalities between us and between groups. It's very sad. It's a very sad moment in time. We're not moving forward. I say we should have, when my parents died within a week of each other, they both died of cancer. And I sat there and I'm just like, how is this? Why is there so much disease? Why are people dying? How come they haven't figured out how to, treat this and eradicate this? And the fact of the matter is that they just don't want to. And I believe they're creating a lot of it. And that's batshit crazy to most people, because they can't imagine that they'd be under such an attack by a medical association that is sued incredibly every year for any number of different drugs that are just hurting people, killing people, just unbelievable. But for some reason, and some people that I speak to think that it's some kind of brain parasite that we've literally pulled together by some kind of infection, that we can sit here and look at a world that is so destructive and so diseased and so off the tracks of what we should be doing here. But sit here and think that it's normal. Sit here and think that people just, dying like, at 30 or 40 of diseases that should have been eradicated long ago. They just sit there and think, well, this person's sick or that person's sick. My sister right now is slowly dying from some sort of parasitic infection over the last 15 years. And it's like, and the medical associations of America, these prestigious places, these or should I say, flattering titles, which the Bible, and I'm not a real religious guy, but the Bible says, do not respect flattering titles. Do not respect flattering titles. And like you said about church, it's the church and religions are part of this deception all over. Rome, all roads lead to Rome, and we look at this Francis and says that there's no hell. Like, I don't believe there's actually. If you look in the definition of hell in Webster's 1820 dictionary and a lot of these legal dictionaries, the definition of hell is a debtor's prison. And what are we all doing? We're all in debt to these banks, to these organizations. Yes. That should never have been, where they just. Yes. I mean, I don't know what banks are over there in Africa, but they're not there. They're not there to, unless you pay all your bills on time and you do everything right, then they'll lend you some money. But if you get into debt trouble, which is very, very easy to do in America, you will be punished forever. You'll be punished. It really doesn't make sense for like if somebody goes out there and they have bad credit, like they pay their bills late, or why would you then the next time that they try to get something, why would you say to them, all right, now instead of you getting this loan at 5%, you're going to get it at 15%, knowing that you already have like an issue. So they just compound it, and of course the credit agencies are just part of the banking institutions in America. I mean, this is obviously it's a network of control. The IMF, the bank in America with they have branches all over. I can't even think of them because they're disgusting, but they're not separate from. A lot of people think that these banks are separate from government, that they work independently from government. No. And that's one of the conspiracies inside the conspiracy, is that these banks were created by and allowed by the United States government to be able to do whatever they want to do. But that's another story for another time. But the banks, we've got Goldman Sachs funding awful things in Africa. They just fund. They're behind the funding of so many awful things. Human trafficking, all this stuff. Wells Fargo is just been cited, and they're going to pay $1 billion of a fine. How about somebody goes to jail? How about somebody goes to jail for mortgage fraud and loan fraud and all these other things? How about somebody go to jail? No, because the bankers they can do whatever they want. And that's why Eric Holder under Obama, and that's why Jeff Sessions under Trump, nobody goes to jail. Nobody, they just take money. And somewhere along the line, when they pay that money, I guarantee it just moves from one pocket to the other. So even if they're paying $1 billion, they're probably going to get that back in some kind of deregulation where they can do whatever they want to do. The banks rule because they control planet Earth, if you will.
Yes.
So what is the next move? Do you have any plans to come back to America to create more awareness, or are you hunkering down to just wait? And I hope this never happens, that they come to your home and say, this is our land now.
Well, as I say, there's a lot of anxiety in South Africa at the moment. People are on edge. Some radical black leaders are talking about, this was fairly well publicized, cutting the throat of whiteness. The level of farm attacks has increased drastically. In January and February of last year, it was 22. In this year, it's 102, with 17 still to be confirmed for the months of January and February 2018. So there's been a 500% increase. So many people are making drastic, urgent preparations for a crisis. We believe that a crisis is going to occur in South Africa very soon. However, so to answer your question directly, many people don't want to believe. I'm talking about Saitlanders. We've been invited to some conferences this year, and our leader declined to attend. I, however, will go for 10 days. I will be at the American Renaissance Conference, and I will also spend a few days in Washington, D.C., meeting some people there.
Okay.
The main thing that we're up to at the moment is a fundraising campaign, a crowdfunding campaign by Freestarter. Freestarter is the conservative equivalent of the various crowdfunding platforms, and they have very kindly given us the opportunity to raise funds. If you have any listeners who may be interested in supporting our bitter cause at this dark time, we ask people please to donate to the Freestarter campaign. It's very easy to do a Google search and pick it up. Free Starter, without the last E. So FREESTARTR, freestarter.com, and you will be able to find our campaign there. Please contribute, please donate, please support us. We desperately need to raise money for the purchase of vital necessities for civilian non-combatants for civil war, which is not far away now. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And I remember, I don't even think I finished what I was going to say about when I was listening to you on Alex Jones's program, and Jones, of all people, to ask this question, because it really kind of projects what he will do if things get to a certain point in America. What he will do, even though he is a fighter for freedom and all these other things. He asked you specifically. He said, "Why don't you just leave?" And this is what, you just yelled. You were just like, no. And it just gave me like goosebumps. Like, I was like, oh my God, I can't even believe he just asked him that. And it was just like the emotion and the, in that moment where I just was like, oh my God, he just asked him if he would just leave in a moment like this. And you're obviously a man of integrity, and you have strong beliefs. And obviously I would not want to get to a point where, I'm reaching out to you on Skype and you never answer again. That would be insane. I would just be like, oh my God, what happened? Did something happen? It's, the world's gotten so crazy. It's gotten so crazy. So crazy.
It has gotten crazy, but we have to stand. I'm not a physically brave person. Make no mistake. If I was a physically brave person, I would have been a better rugby player, and I would have played rugby for many years longer. But sometimes even cowards know that the right thing to do is to stand. It's just the right thing to do.
Right.
And that's what we're going to do. We are going to stand our ground here, Andrew. Mark my words.
I hear you.
We are going to be the last nation in the history of the world that stands as a nation, not as a country, not as a state, not as some kind of homogeneous mishmash of miscegenated cultures, as a distinct nation that stands to the greater glory of Almighty God, in defense of Christianity against barbarianism in the world.
Godspeed to you, my friend. I wish I'm going to be in contact with you when you are in America again. Please, any time frame on when that's going to be?
Yeah, I fly on Friday, the 20th of April. That's next Friday.
Okay.
I'll be there from Saturday, the 21st in Washington, D.C., in that region, Virginia, Delaware, Washington. I might even take a trip to New York for 5 days. Mm-hmm. And then I'll be going down to the American Renaissance Conference, AMREN, in Tennessee. I'll be there from the 26th. So I'll be in the Northeast, around about the kind of tri-state area, on the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 24th of this month.
Mm-hmm.
On the 25th, I'll be traveling, and then from the 26th through to the 29th, I will be at the AMREN conference at Montgomery Bell State Park in Tennessee.
So what, about 10 days, and then you're going to be here for about 2 weeks, or just something?
Yeah, just about 10 days.
Just about 10 days. Okay. All right. Well, safe travels, and again, reach out to me. I'm in the Philadelphia area if you're spinning through, and you want to grab a cup of coffee or something, I can meet you up somewhere. I just wish you all the luck in the world in your endeavors and your bravery to stand firm in light of such a insane situation.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Andrew, and thank you for having the Suidlanders back on your show. We appreciate it. We're in a terrible plight at the moment, and we really appreciate it when people like you give us the opportunity to talk about what is really happening in South Africa and to circumvent the mainstream media that are simply not reporting this massive rate of murder on the farms and in the suburbs of white people.
You're very welcome. Anytime. Just message me like you did the other day, and you've got the floor anytime you want.
Good day, and God bless you, Andrew.
Same to you, Simon.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, so that was Simon Roche of Suidlanders, and he's going to be traveling. Like he said, he's going to be traveling here. He's going to be here on the 20th through the 29th on the East Coast. He's going to be in D.C., the belly of the beast, to try to create awareness for the situation that is and seems very just an imminent, genocide of people, because he's not going to just, if someone comes to his home, he's not going to say, here, take my home. So he's going to fight, and fight and or die, whatever it takes. He's going to stand firm, and I can't even imagine what that would entail. But and I mean, that just kind of really shows you the where we've gotten to. I mean, at this point in time, where we should be thriving, there are those that wish to destroy. And so, let's see what we got here. Let's see what we got. Finish the program up with some news here. Again, Trump orders military strikes. Huge blast heard in Damascus. Even after Mr. Magoo, Mattis, said, there's no real, we don't have proof, we don't have this, we don't have that. Nikki Haley is just a whore for whoever, and she doesn't even realize it. And then you could see that all this information is compartmentalized. She's not going to realize. All she knows is somebody gassed someone else, a leader gassed someone else. She doesn't realize what she's doing. And if she does, I hope that, that karmically she faces it. But she is under the control of the system, where she truly believes that this happened because she believes in a flattering title, and just unbelievable. To think that we live in this particular situation right now, where people are being lied to and then call for to bomb another country. Let's see what else we got. Apple has had 12 people arrested for leaks. Cohen seeks injunction to stop FBI from examining materials seized during raid. What else do we got here? Spain to deliver 5 warships worth $2.5 billion to Saudi Arabia Defense Ministry. Tell my mom I love her. Boy's 9/11 calls telling police he's trapped, ignored until he died. Zuckerberg admits he's developing artificial intelligence to censor content. And I mean, as I sat there and I watched him being questioned by other despicable pieces of garbage like Dick Durbin, just looking at his face, other people had this same effect. Where he looks like he's some kind of like robot or some kind of, I don't know. He looks like he's like some kind of alien of some sort. And I mean, for Dick Durbin and a lot of these other people that have blood on their hands for any number of reasons to sit there, and of course they voted for the Patriot Act and these other pieces of legislation that like lock the corporation down. And for them to be questioning Zuckerberg, who is equally a piece of garbage, about people's privacy online, where they give it away, it's just a joke. It's like the criminals. It's like, I mean, they always investigate themselves. Look at Comey. Comey is presented with all the information about Hillary, and then he does nothing. Makes it look like something's going to happen, but then nothing. And so, again, he was most likely told, yeah, you're not going to prosecute her. You're just, you're not. Because we'll destroy you, okay? You'll be destroyed. We'll find something on you. We've got something on you already. That's why you're the director, okay? So whatever it is that we have against you, we're going to, if in fact you do this, you will be destroyed. So he didn't do it. Okay, he's got a family. They would probably kill his family or something at some point or whatever. That's the way this system works, and that's what happens when you become the head of these organizations. You're compromised. So Zuckerberg, just a fucking weirdo, and again, the Bill Gates of Facebook. Got to have that face. Got to have that point person that represents this draconian organization that was created most likely for no other reason than to just data mine information about people. Even though they told the truth during the questioning about the when they said there wasn't that much influence coming through Facebook or Twitter that would have steered people in a direction where Trump would have, Trump won so fucking crazily. He won And, of course, the popular vote bullshit comes into play for the sore losers. But, again, we didn't really win anything with Trump. We didn't win anything at all.
There is only one holistic system of systems.
I will MK Ultra ya. Put the MK scope on ya. If the MK hits ya, it's guaranteed to open ya. The 57mm Mark 110, 220 rounds a minute, try to stop them. Don't put that on your wish list, that's retarded babble. Protesters make the hit list soon as they start to rabble. They are nothing but fishes in the barrel. It doesn't have to be Christmas for a carol. Some decorate with ornamental decorum. Some perform Shakana on Hanukkah and Purim. That's where my job come in. I am a blessing to the mercenary for the corporation selling weapons to them. Any potential competitor step into them. I'm authorized to knock them out and stick a GPS into them. They want to sell uranium to Iran that's enriched. That's a bitch. Now we gotta teach them lessons.